Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Charles from the channel Books on Stereo, and I'm here to bring you a really cool interview with the Amanda Bouchet. Like, if you haven't been into fantasy romance, you need to read her books. She has a Kingmaker Chronicles and then an Endeavor Trilogy, which is a sci-fi romance trilogy, which I haven't read a ton of sci-fi romance trilogies, and oh my goodness, they're so good. Like, I don't even know which one is my favorite because I love them so much. But then I also am joined by my lovely co-host Nicole from Who Picked This Book, who is also a super fan of Amanda Boucher. So the first question I have for you, Amanda, is like, what kind of drew you into writing romance?
Well, thank you for hosting me today. To start off, I'm so excited to be here. And romance is because I love reading romance. Really, when I started writing, I just wanted to emulate my favorite romance novels, really. And I needed to have that outlet for my own emotions or whatever. And of course, my first attempts at writing were, pretty mediocre, I think. There's plenty of stuff that's stopped and started and stopped, to put in a drawer or whatever. It was kind of a learning process because I'm basically self-taught, just through trial and error and reading. And I think as you read, you just sort of gather into yourself what makes a good story. And so with the pacing and what happens to the characters and how the relationships come together, and the dark moment in the middle where everything goes wrong and how to build it back up. So I guess that the reason I wrote romance is because I love romances. In fact, I used to read it a little more widely. And as I get older, really all I want to read is romance. It can be any kind of romance, really, but if there's not that love story and that romantic element to it with a happy ending guaranteed, I'll pass.
Same. Oh my
Same.
God.
Like, romances like spoil my brain so much where like I think like I'm like, okay, these two characters have to get together. Even if it's not a romance, I'm like, but I see it happening. Like, let me contact one of my favorite authors. I'm like, write this fan fiction for me because I need to see their love story.
That's funny. Yeah. And even when there were times when I sort of thought I was going to write more of a fantasy with a romantic element, but not so much of a romance. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't make myself do it. I was like, no. These characters, they are so getting together and they're so getting it on. And like, go for it.
You're like, try as I might. Even though I tried to write something else, it's going to turn into a romance. I love it. I love it.
Now I'm just like all for it. Just go for it.
Yeah, that's really cool. So like, kind of segue into the Kingmaker Chronicles. What was like the idea behind, because the fantasy world is so unique, and for everyone else watching, there will be no spoilers, so we'll try to keep it spoiler light as possible. So like, if there is, we're gonna warn you, give you a spoiler, but the books have been out for a while. Go read them. And then you can watch. Go read them. They're super. I listen to the audiobooks, and the audiobooks are absolutely amazing for all your books.
So good.
I was like, I love them. I love them so much. But what was kind of your idea for this world, kind of blending mythology, Greek mythology, with like kind of like some fantasy tropes?
Well, I went into it looking to write a romantic fantasy, and as I just said, it really turned more into a romance. A fantasy romance. For me, the difference is a fantasy romance is really, it's 50% fantasy and 50% romance. You've got both full on. And a romantic fantasy for me would be more like a fantasy, which is the main concentration, and then there's a romantic element throughout. And I actually went into it thinking I was going to do something more with a romantic element throughout, but concentrated on the fantasy. But like I said, I just couldn't do it. I had Kat and Griffin on the page, and I was just like, these two are combustible and they need to combust.
And we thank you for it. We thank you for it.
That is so true, because you put us through a slow burn with that first book. I was like,
oh God,
I was like, when is it gonna happen? I was like, I'm usually like, it's hard to sell me on slow burns because you have to make it worth it. And then you did it. I was like, okay, I trust Amanda. Like, I was fine sitting through all those. I was like, okay, when are they gonna get together? I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'm interested in the story, but like, when are they gonna get together? And then when they do, I'm like,
the slow burn was like, so worth it.
That was so worth it. It was so worth it in the end.
Oh, good. And then I think I was so excited they were finally together that book 2 is like really sexy.
Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, we built up to it so long in the first book, and they do get together at the end of the first book, so we don't, leave readers frustrated. But but book 2, I was like, woo, we're together now. It's like full on. So that's a little.
You got the green light.
What?
You got the green light. You're like, they're together now. Sex everywhere. Let's do it.
Let's just go for it. Let's just go for it.
So now I think I've forgotten the original question. Oh yeah, blending. How did I blend in Greek mythology? So basically, I just wanted to come up with a fantasy world that involved magic, and I had Kat, the heroine, in my head. Strong magic, a girl, sort of a hidden identity trope with. There's definitely the chosen one, special snowflake ideas as well. But I think it's not something I don't like to begin with, so I'm fine with it. But I gave her enough insecurities and self-doubt. And that sarcastic, sort of self-deprecating side that she doesn't always feel like, just all powerful, because that her own doubts and issues kind of balance that out. So I really had Kat in my head, and I had the fantasy world and the magic, but the Greek mythology kind of tumbled into it in the beginning, in the first chapter. I reached a point where I wanted to make some kind of reference, like, an oh my god type reference or something. And I was like, well, fantasy worlds need a theological system. So what is it going to be? And I'm actually half Greek. So that's probably why the Greeks.
That's awesome.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, I'm born and raised in the US. I live in France now, but my mother is first generation American, and her mother and father were both born in Greece. So it's a little farther away, but I mean, we still kept it pretty alive in terms of food and some endearments and certain things, certain aspects. But it was stories, for example. So we read, myths and things, gods, men, monsters type books when I was younger. So I had it in my head, but I didn't go into the book thinking about that either, but maybe, I'm not exactly sure, 8-10 pages in or something, I was like, okay, what's the system here? And I said, why not Greek? Because I know it, and a lot of people know it, or at least have a vague, background.
Understanding.
Right, exactly, understanding. So it's in their head somewhere from this, that, or the other thing, a TV show, a movie, a book, or whatever. And I thought that would be fun because sometimes fantasy worlds can get so complex. And having something where you have a basic knowledge already, even if it's not too in depth, I thought could be really helpful. And I was more interested in the romance and the adventure and the, getting to the danger and the sex and whatever else.
And the sex, don't forget the sex.
That's a very crucial element.
Yeah, exactly. That I didn't want to spend a ton of time explaining some complex theological system where I make up the name of this and the name of that. So boom, there it was. And that was the reason for choosing. Those are two reasons: my own background and this sort of ease, sort of streamlining the story, so people didn't have to think about that too much. It's just like, oh yeah, Poseidon, Zeus. They kind of have this knowledge already. Poseidon, god of the sea, water. Okay, that's good. All you need is like 2 little nuggets of information somewhere in the back of your head, and it's just going to make the story go so much faster, and you don't have to think about that and then remember, wait, who was gobbledygook god and who was that gobbledygook god, so there you go, Greek and fantasy. And of course it's loosely based on Greek mythology. I then set it in my own world and do my own thing with it. So it's sort of the mythos as we know it transformed into my own use, I guess.
That's actually pretty brilliant because, like you get into these really dense fantasies where it's mostly just fantasy, like you said, the difference between, romantic fantasy and actually like a romance. And then you get so lost in like the theology, and it's like, okay, well, you explain this back here, and then when it actually becomes like fruition and important in the story, it's all the way over here. So you're like, what happened? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
that way we can focus on the romance because it is a romance and that's what we're here for.
Exactly, because I've already got a complex sort of a political system, different realms, and there are rulers. You've got a lot of names already in there that I try not to dump them all in at once, kind of weave them in. But it's kind of a lot, and then the different magic things, and so that was one thing that could just kind of be set aside, but then it became way more integral to the story and built and built and built out of that. But still, with something that the majority of readers will be vaguely familiar with, if not very familiar with. So that's fun.
There's a lot of things that can turn readers away too, is like when it's info dumpy, like when you just spend all this time just like, okay, here's
info
me
dumping,
explaining everything.
Info dumping.
Yeah. I think you did this perfectly. I don't think it was so good the way it was built, and you just kind of gave us information a little bit at a time while still focusing on our two main protagonists, and then also side characters were so rich as well that you want side character information too. I just think it was like just a perfect blend. Everything you put in there was just great.
Thank you.
Yeah,
yay!
I wholeheartedly agree, because I'm not a detail oriented reader. So if I get bogged down with, if you give me info dumping after page after page after page, I'm like, I'm not paying attention to this. That's why I set aside rereads. And one of the things that I love about your books is that I got Griffin and Kat's story, but then I feel like I can go back and reread it for the side characters and get more acclimated with them, and then I can go back and read more for the world. Because if you only really want the romance, you can still enjoy that story and not get bogged down by all these other things. They just help move the story along. It doesn't affect your comprehension of the story. Where I feel like with some fantasy books, you absolutely have to understand the world, the history, the characters, or you're gonna get to book 2, and you're like, I have no idea what is happening. What is this world? What do they have to do? What is this cup? What does it mean for the world?
Well, that's exactly what I wanted to avoid. And my goal is to entertain. I'm not there to teach anyone a history lesson or a mythology lesson. I want people to have a good time and sort of breeze through the book and just, turn those pages not as fast as they can, maybe, but,
we were talking about this earlier where we're like, we need more books from you. So we're just turn the pages, eat them like candy, and we're like, where's the next one?
I was like, I finished Starbreaker. I was like, where's the next book? I was like, I started to freak out. I was like, there has to be another book. This can't be the end.
It's not the end. I have a title. It's book 3 in that series is Dawnmaker. So there's Night Chaser, Starbreaker, and Dawnmaker. But I haven't started Dawnmaker yet, unfortunately. So
I'm writing it down.
just so we don't forget. One of the things that I really liked about the Kingmaker trilogy was kind of how Kat is unsure about herself. But pretty much throughout the whole entire trilogy, we find stuff about her as we kind of go through it. It makes sense with the gods, of course, not telling you the answers that you need to know, so you can go oh, this would have been so helpful 2 books ago. And I love that because it kind of plays with that chosen one trope. Because usually the chosen one, probably by the end of book 1, they understand almost everything they need to do. They got their stuff together, and then they're just on this trajectory. But I like how this character, in some situations, especially facing her mother, she couldn't do what she needed to do. She was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I love that struggle in her because it made her so much more relatable instead of this all powerful being. And so it was I was like, come on, gods, come on, Aries, just tell her what she needs to know. Come on, we're on book 3 right now. We're halfway through book 3. We can't be dropping more knowledge about Kat right now. I'm typical gods, don't care, just operate on their own timetables. I was especially that scene in the 3rd book with Griffin's brother. I was
oh yeah.
How did you think about all these plots and turns and twists that the plot takes? And I was just mind blown.
Mine was blown.
Well, there's lots of things in there that are interesting because, well, first of all, the Greek gods and Greek mythology, they're pretty awful. In general. They're abusive, they're jealous, they're violent, there are tons of things that, none of it's good. And yet they were both good and bad in this story because just like in the real stories, that they help heroes on their journey. but they also hinder and, complicate things as well. So I think that stayed true. Sort of Kat and Griffin, also the main characters, they're on their hero's journey, just like, Odysseus on his Odyssey, but with, the gods helping or not, stumbling blocks along the way. And like Kat, I love that you say she's relatable, because she's with her mother, for example. There's a abusive past with a mother abusing Kat, but I think it remains true to. I don't have, I'm not speaking for personal experience, but from what I think is probably hard in that kind of relationship is the child is still craving the parent's affection and approval, even though the parent has hurt them repeatedly and over and over. And Kat, as a character, is kind of stuck in that cycle. She's still craving her mother's love and approval, despite the fact that her mother was abusive all her life until she ran away and escaped her. And so that relationship continues in that vein until the very end, where Kat has to, make her decision, and so does the mother in the end. But we won't get into spoilers there. So yeah, she's super relatable. The gods are, doing their thing, and they're not revealing things. And that's part of another theme that's in the book, is sort of destiny versus free will. So the gods are there pushing her along on her destiny, but leaving her room to exercise her free will as well and make her own decisions. So it's kind of a balance there. For me, as a writer, it was a balance too. What is she going to decide, and what is decided for her, and how does that all weave together in the end?
Yeah.
Right. I feel like the gods, even like just in, in general, they only help when it's, profitable to them. Like, they're very self-serving. And so it's just like they're deliberately withholding information. But yeah, with Kat being like so relatable, like this, like we were saying in the beginning, where she's like the sarcasm, like towards herself and to others. And it's just like, oh my God, like that is me. Like that is like, I loved her. That's why I loved her so much. It's just like, I could be like so sarcastic, and I was like, you are so funny. I love you so much. But yeah, she's like going through this journey, and how Charles was saying that, not by the end of book one, she's not the typical chosen one where she's like, oh yeah, I got this in the bag, I can do this. She believes she can do it, but honestly, she's flying by the seat of her pants. She does things because she has to. She's put in those situations where she either does it or she dies, kind of thing. So it's like, or someone she loves is going to die. Yeah. So I really love that as well. Like, she's not like the know-it-all, chosen one kind of thing. That I really like that.
Yeah, right up until the very end, she's still discovering her own capabilities, what she's able to do. And once she figures that out and is comfortable in her own skin, actually, she has to figure out how to be comfortable in her own skin before she can understand her true power.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting with your hero. Like, Griffin is like, he could almost have been like a very like prototypical alpha like male hero, but like you do some very interesting things with him that like make him more relatable, especially when we hit to the third book. I won't give any spoilers, but there's something that happens within his family that I was just like, and watching him work through that conflict, I was like, it's so fascinating. And like just like all the developments that surround that whole relationship and his character, I was like, I really, really like him, because like he still has those alpha tendencies, but he's so much more nuanced. So I wonder like how you went about creating his character and kind of satisfying that alpha, but doing it a little bit of a different way.
Yeah, well, I think as a reader, I like the alpha male, the growly alpha.
Yes.
But at the same time, it can be a little annoying and overbearing. So somehow I wanted Griffin to be the alpha male, but the feminist at the same time. So he's got that sort of growly, possessive, overbearingness, little old-fashionedness to him. But at the same time, he knows he's there for Kat. He knows that he's in the support role, even though she doesn't treat him that way. I mean, they go about this in an equal sort of, they rise the ranks equally. But at the same time, everybody knows, her and him, that and the readers that she's the one with the power. She's the leader. And he's fine with that. Like, he's there to facilitate her leading, and he pushes her sometimes into her role. Like, she would just be hiding out at the circus, like in page 1.
I see ya.
Come into her life.
I know, like, prophecy. What? No, bye.
Like, sorry.
can't do that.
Yeah, she's like, bye bye, I'm out of here. No, I'm not taking any of this on. And without him, she wouldn't have. So he pushes her into, he forces her in a way, a little pushy sometimes, to step up and fulfill her role. And even though it's a role he could have taken, he knows that it's meant for her innately, and also just through events, he knows that it's meant for her. So he's fine being her support and pushing her that way. But at the same time, he's equally there for her to, you know, take on whatever he needs to help her. Yeah, so I like to call him the alpha feminist.
That's a good. I think we need more of those.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we need more of those, because like his role wasn't ever diminished. I never felt like he was not on like Kat's partner. Like, it felt like he was just like, she's in the starring role, I'm here to help support her, and like he does it. Like, I really like that, because like usually with Alpha, the power dynamics are usually flipped, and you typically have like the female character who's like, oh, I need protecting. Or like the Alpha's like super aggressive, and kind of like diminishes the feminine's kind of like the female's like power throughout and agency throughout the story. Even though, don't get me wrong, in a dark romance, I sometimes I do like that. Like, it works for me sometimes. Like, let's be honest. But I really liked in this one, we got something really different and really nuanced. So I really I really just loved it.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, he's full of, you know, he has his own flaws too, which is interesting. Like, he can be a little jealous sometimes, even though he has no reason to be. And he can, like, something like loyalty is so important to him that when he feels threatened, he can his loyalty feels threatened, he can go berserk kind of. And, but, you know, he learns from his mistakes. I think that's what's interesting about him. And I think Kat too. They both make mistakes. They both do things they shouldn't do. And if, you know, then as a couple, they get to the other side of that, and they've learned from it, and they grow, and they're stronger as a partnership together going into the next step. So I definitely had them sort of, you know, stumble and fall sometimes and do things they regret, and then come back from it stronger, both within themselves and as a couple.
Yeah. I think you did that perfectly, because like you said, there's like that fine line between, yes, like he's an alpha hero, but then tipping onto the side of like the alpha hole, where like like where he's like, you know, like so aggressive and so domineering. And like what Charles was saying with the dark romance, you expect that in dark romance, you know, but yeah, there should be like alpha hole, alpha feminist, and then you got your beta hero, but it's like but yeah, he was so good. Like character development in Cats as well, like not just in book 1, but throughout the entire trilogy is, you know, fantastic. Like, they're constantly learning, and they're like, okay, this is the way I can support my partner. They're constantly always thinking that, how to support my partner. And when Kat is stumbling and she's not believing in herself, he's always there to pick her up. And I think he does that very well.
Oh, good. That was the idea. So, and yeah, he's definitely not a beta hero. There's nothing beta about him. And yet,
no,
not at all.
Not at all. Don't get it twisted.
You wouldn't find a beta hero kidnapping the heroine in book 1.
Yeah, sorry.
No. Yes, by the way, that's how the book starts. You know, he drags her away with a magic rope, saying, "Here, you're going to help me, and in fact, I'm going to help you too." But you don't know that.
That is my favorite. That is so great.
I love that. Like,
I loved it.
Like, you did like the whole captive like trope so well, because like it makes sense with the slow burn, because like it would be kind of weird if by like chapter 2 they're already going at it, and you're like, wait, she's already okay with the fact that she's being kidnapped against her will.
Oh,
and, like, they already had those feelings
for like 200 pages, didn't they? I mean,
no,
it was not.
I was like,
but you can still feel that chemistry and that tension. Yeah, you can still feel it.
Yeah.
And what was funny all throughout all throughout that too was what she said out loud versus what was going on in her head.
Yes.
So there's a real imbalance of what comes out of her mouth and what's going on in her head as she's thinking. And I think that's where we get a lot of the humor in the first half of the book too, is throughout the whole trilogy actually, but especially in that beginning section where she's not willing to say out loud, you know, anything good or positive or nice about anything, but in her head, and she's starting to get confused and maybe like this guy.
Yeah. I think one thing that I loved about our two main characters is they're very self-aware of the world around them, especially when it comes to, like, especially in book 3 with the whole brother situation. See, no spoilers, but that kind of like really changed my perspective a little bit, like reading the rest of the book, and that's why it made it a little bit harder, because I'm like, it's weird when you see the main characters acknowledge where the other characters may be coming from, especially Kat does that for Griffin's brother, and I was like, hold up. I was like, wait. This is like playing with my head right now. I'm like, who do I root for? Because like now I'm like, I can see everyone's perspective, and I'm like, I'm conflicted now as a reader. And I was like, I love how you were able to do that, because usually sometimes I'm like, okay, hero, heroine, bad guy, who cares about you? Okay, only this story. But then I found myself going like, oh wait, now I want to know about his story. Like, what happened with him? Like, why did he do what he did? Or like, what is this situation? I need more about this story. And I was like, it just kind of like flipped the perspective for me. I was like, I wasn't like, I was actually like rooting against our main two characters, but I was actually like, I see the other perspectives now. And I see like, it's not all black and white. And there's a lot of gray area. And even our two main characters kind of recognize that they're sometimes in that gray area too, with the things that they have to do. So I wonder, like, was it something that you played with or conscious of when writing this trilogy?
Definitely the idea of gray areas, yes. Griffin is more black and white in the beginning, and Kat's more black. And I think they end up sort of meeting in the middle in a way, so that they both are nuanced as they spend time together and the story goes on. And there are definitely some villains that are just pure villains. And then there are people like the brother that you're talking about who, jerk, you know, you kind of don't like him, but he's not innately bad, you know. So, and then, but doing what he does is bad, but there are consequences. And then, I'm actually thinking about writing a novella about that character. So.
I was going to ask you, like, I need more from this character. Like, I was just like, what happens is consequences. I was like, dang, Amanda, like that hurt. Like that whole scene playing out, they're just like, I don't want to give it away, but it's like you think it's gonna go one way, and then like all the characters are like, wait, what?
Exactly. Everybody was like,
I think he made the only possible choice that he could make. He made the right choice in the end. So he's entirely redeemable. He's not innately bad, and he did what he needed to do in the end, but it still had huge consequences for everyone and really messed with Griffin's head. So
yeah, and I love that conflict because he's so like you said in the beginning, he's like very like, this is bad, this is like, and he prizes loyalty so much, and to watch that, like the one character like shatter that so completely, and just like reading from him, I'm like, just say what you're feeling, man, just say it. And you could tell he's like struggling so hard. And I like that Kat actually realizes that there's a part, like just building into the self-awareness of these characters, that she recognized that she's like, I get why his brother did what he did. Like he did what he felt was right. And like, and trying to help Griffin like process that a little bit more and more, especially throughout the course of the third book. I was like, I was just here for like a good romance and a good fantasy, but then like the third book just hit me in my feels. I was just like,
it gets so complex.
Very emotional to write. Very emotional. I cried like all the time. Not everything is sad or bad, but it was super emotional, and I would be like,
the emotional journey,
the emotion, you felt that. I was like, I had to like actually like line up like some like short novellas like to kind of like give me like pick me back up before I had to take a break, and I was like, what is up with me? Like, I love this book, but like I can only like do 2 chapters at a time, and I'm like, okay, I need to go read something else, like reset and then go back in, and because I'll be messaging you, Amanda, going like, why did this character do this? I need more from this character. Like, what is happening over here? And I was just like, I just realized there's so much more in this world, like so many stories that you can tell. I was like, I really need that brother. So I'm super happy. Like, please write that novella or write a full-length trilogy.
And so what I'm writing right now is the first spinoff. So for readers of the series, they know Beta Team. So the team that supports Cat and Griffin throughout the whole trilogy. And I always wanted to write the Beta Team stories afterwards. So the original trilogy is contained already. It's from Cat's point of view, and there's, you know, there's definitely a resolution to that in terms of what Cat and Griffin accomplished. But then there's all these side characters that are just, they still have their, you know, it's not that we were, you know, it's not that we were left hanging right in the middle of something for them, but people and me as the author, I want to tell those stories and have people read those stories. So yeah. So the first Beta Team spinoff is in the works now. I'll just give the heroes. I'm so excited. That's about Flynn.
I'm so excited. I am so excited. I feel like you're like the author that got me into fantasy romance. Like, I love it. I love it so much. It was like perfect mix of fantasy, perfect mix of like action and romance. And like, I actually want to go back and reread the books because I definitely felt like some things I just completely went over my head, just like taking the story the first time. So like, I love when a story has enough where I can reread it and still be like, oh yeah, I remember this. Like, let me pay attention to these side characters a little bit more because now I know what's going on with Griffin and Cat. I can kind of ignore them. I can focus on a lot of these other ancillary things. So like, I just love this trilogy so much. It's amazing.
So good.
Yeah. And a reread's actually fun with this one because there's lots of little hints that don't actually you don't actually see what they mean till book 3, for example. And if you go back, you're like, oh, so that's what that's gonna mean later on. So if it fits into the story, you don't need, as you read it the first time, it's okay, you know. But if you reread, I think you'll see a lot of little things throughout that you know that come threads that tie together. So,
I love that little Easter eggs.
I love that so much.
And what's fun is I don't actually plan that out necessarily, but when I get to a certain point in a book, I can find those links. I can create those links. Yeah. You know, I don't necessarily on page 50 say, you know, 1,200 pages later, I'm going to put this in. It doesn't work that way. But when I get to 1,200 pages later and I think of something I wrote back on page 50, I'm like, and I can link it there. So it's actually going in that direction that I link, like from back to front rather than from front to back, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So like, now I want to talk about probably my favorite. I don't even know. Like, this is like the Kingmaker trilogy is coming for it, but like I love the Endeavor trilogy so much. Like the couple in this one, there's some steamy scenes in that first book. I was like, Amanda, like, what is going on in this book? I was like, you are blown. I was kind of scared because it was like sci-fi. I'm like, how much in the science are we gonna get in here? But it was like, it was a perfect amount where I wasn't like, oh my goodness, isn't she explaining to me like what Adam is like for 20 pages? Like I can't, but like this book, like I won't talk about the sequel because Nicole hasn't read it, but
I haven't read it.
But the sequel, you make some plot twist in there. I was like, Amanda, like the whole, like we still have like the kind of like familial kind of aspect in this series, but it's like from the father, and I can't remember the main character's name off the top of my head. I'm so bad.
Tess?
And
yes, Tess, right?
Yes,
yeah,
Tess.
And like seeing that flip with the father versus Tess, I was like, I love this so much.
Yeah, and this one, the big bad is the father instead of the big bad being the mother. Yeah, I'm not sure why I did that. I don't know why the big bad always has to be a family member.
You're like, how can I hurt this character in the most dramatic way possible?
I think that's it. Parents. It's your family, doing awful things to you. It's even worse than some random, I don't know, it's all bad, but so that's another situation of the main character being on the run and having escaped an abusive situation, but that's all in the backstory. I don't have that on the page. I don't want to write that, I don't think, on the page, but it is in the backstory. And I love Tess and Shade. Oh my God. I think as much as I love Cat and Griffin, I think Tess and Shade have my heart.
They have my heart right now. Like, I don't like.
I want my own Shade. Like, where is
I think for me, it's the Kingmaker, just because that one is the one that's more fresh in my head. So I was just like, I just keep thinking back to them. And I've reread the first book in Kingmakers twice, but it's like I want to reread Night Chaser before I move on to Starbreaker. So like it will be fresh.
You will love Starbreaker. Starbreaker, I love that. I was like, when you read Starbreaker, I read it like when it first came out. I was like, hold on, I don't see any news for the third book. I was like I guess it could end there, but like, there's still a lot more to like discover. But like this couple and their steam level, I was like, I love Cat and Griffin, but like, I'm sorry, like
the steam was there from like page one.
I was like, this couple, like they're just like they have something. I'm like they just like edge them out just slightly, and I just love the plot in this one so much too, because like I was a little bit scared, but you just kind of like slip right in, and you're like, okay, everything makes sense. It's not too sciencey. We have this blood thing going on. And I was like, I'm so here for it. Like, I love this so much.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I actually think of it as science fantasy, more like a Star Wars thing rather than a Star Trek, which is science fiction, because there's sort of like almost magical aspect to the world.
Yeah.
And yeah, I definitely don't concentrate on. I'm not, like I said, with the Kingmaker, I'm not there to give anyone a lesson in Greek mythology. In Night Chaser, I'm not there to give anyone a lesson in astrophysics or whatever, because already I
no, thank you.
Thanks. I'm not a rocket scientist.
Like, sorry.
I just want to entertain, so I don't want to bog down in details. And it's more of a science fantasy. So it's futuristic. There's the faster than light travel. We're out and about in the galaxy, but it's fantasy. So for fantasy readers, if they see sci-fi romance or whatever, it shouldn't scare them off because it's fantasy.
Yeah, because there isn't a ton that I'm aware of like that are sci-fi romances. I feel like I haven't read a ton that I've come across that are sci-fi. I could be wrong.
I don't know. I think that honestly, the Night Chaser series seemed a little on the fringes of sci-fi romance, also because it's not an alien romance. It's not fated mates or whatever.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So there's that whole segment of sci-fi romance, which is very popular. And then so my books kind of fell into no man's land, I think, a little bit there, because it was more fantasy. It wasn't an alien romance. And there aren't that many out there. I think Jesse Mihalik's Consortium Rebellion series.
Oh, yeah. I heard about that.
It's people, humans, but out and about in a futuristic galaxy that's related to our own, just, way in the future. So that's what I'm thinking of that has that same aspect without being an alien or fated mates or that kind of thing. Ironically, actually, both our books, well, Night Chaser came out first, and then her first book came out maybe a year later, not sure. And so there was a little pocket of books in that genre that kind of happened all at once. And she's now got 3 books out. I've got the second book out, and so that's cool. I'm kind of hoping more will come. Sort of boost up this sort of middle ground between fantasy and
us too.
Yeah. I just want more. Like, I was just wondering, are you gonna like explore this world further if possible, like you're gonna do with the Kingmaker? Because I definitely feel like there's you have the team element with Tessa's team that you could do.
I'm not gonna make plans for that. I mean, I'm definitely gonna write the 3rd book to close out the trilogy. And those books are, so the first book is mainly from Tessa's point of view. There's some of Shade's point of view. The second book is a 50-50 mix of Tess and Shade's point of view. And the third book will probably be the same. And I'm kind of toying with the idea of throwing in a couple other points of view, but small. Like they would be the main two. And then like a little bit here and there, maybe from the bad guy. Not sure.
I like that though. I like that.
And then I think I would end that in a way where we're satisfied with the ending for everyone, including the secondary characters. Because I'm not certain to go back to it. Whereas with the Kingmaker books, I was certain I wanted to go back to it. It's not that I don't love the Endeavor, I love them. But the problem is I need to get back to the Kingmaker characters that I've been promising readers and myself for several years now. And so, and I'm not good at juggling two things at once. I'm a slow writer. I take a lot of time and I write big, long books. So they're also slower because of that. And I don't feel comfortable saying, oh yeah, there's gonna be more here and more here. And I'm sort of all over the place. So yeah, my goal is to round that out with the third book, Dawnmaker, in a way that's satisfactory to all the characters. And then, yeah, if one day I went back to it for more, why not? Or it could be in that world with new characters, for example. I'm not sure, but I'm not thinking about that yet because I've got Flynn's book, Carver's book, Kaya's book, Cato's book.
Oh yeah, you got a lot of books, and I was like, the Kingmaker, you have so many books you could write.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All characters. There's
so already
many.
That's like 5 Kingmaker books. So we're already well into like, this decade.
And Charles is trying to make you do like 3 or 4 books a year, and you're just like,
honestly, I want the Endeavor, more from the Endeavor world, like, because I just love those characters so hardcore.
I do too.
Like, because that was my first experience. Like, and then I went to Kingmaker, and I was like, sorry, this is not Tess and Slade. I'm like, I love you too, but I'm like, they already have number 1. Like, you're close. Like, you're very close. But like I still think about, I want to go back and reread those books like so many times because I love these characters. I love the conflict. I love the plot twist in this one. I was like, the second book, I was like, I did not see any of that coming. I was like, Amanda, how did you even do that? Like, it just came out left field, and I was like, what? I was like, hold up, wait.
I surprised you. Hooray.
Yeah, I was shocked. I won't spoil it for Nicole, but like, there's some. I'm
gonna read this book today.
Read it, like, and then tell me your thoughts because like there's some plot twists in that book. I was like, what? I was like, hold up, really? I was like, and there's some amazing battles. Like, just in general, you're really good action scenes. Which is like, you don't find that in a ton of romance. It's usually like kind of like they battled and then on to the next and then on to the next scene. I like that you actually get those really good battle scenes.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I spend a lot of time on those. I think fight scenes and sex scenes are the ones that take the longest to write because like I write it, but then I go back and I rework it a lot because it's choreography for both of them actually. And then getting
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
They're not just battling. You're inside their heads as they're battling. So there's a ton of stuff going on. It's not just hack slash blood. Woo,
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot going
action
on.
Scenes. I feel like action scenes could be so difficult in books. Just like you said, you're in their head and you're writing it. It's not like you're seeing it. Like as a film, action scenes are, made for film. I feel like, it's like in books, it's very difficult to write, but I feel like you do it perfectly. Like there's like sometimes in action scenes, if there's a lot going on, especially like a big battle or like there's a team and you want to check in with everybody on the team, you can get kind of lost of what like the main focus is. But yeah, but I feel that did not happen in these books. I feel like they were spot on.
Oh, good. There's one part in Breath of Fire, the second in the Kingmaker trilogy. At the end, it's like gladiator style games, and so there's a lot of scenes. 3 sort of 3 rounds back to back. And that was really hard to keep I tend to focus on Kat and Griffin. And I'd realized for several pages I hadn't checked in with the other team members and what they were doing.
Oh, yeah.
That's
took
true.
a long time to write because I had to not dilute it too much, but still keep track of everyone. That was pretty complicated, but I think it came out well. That's one of my favorite sections of the whole trilogy, actually, is that the Aegon games.
Yeah, those are really cool to read.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and I
feel
love
like
the action scenes in all of them. Really, I think that's fun to write.
Because I feel like a lot of romance readers, like if the sex scenes are not written well, they tend to skip those, and then I would say action scenes are like one thing where they skip it. They just go, okay, I'm going to the banter and the inner monologue.
Yeah.
And like those, especially for me, like I find now that I read more and more romance, I know what I'm looking for. It doesn't have to be the most explicit of like sex scenes, but I want something really well written. Like the character emotions have to be there. It doesn't have to be like a crazy long. Like sometimes, like I enjoyed some scenes that were like only like 2 paragraphs long, but they were done so well because the characters were right where they need to be. The emotions were there. It was well written. And I was like, that's what I need. I just need something satisfying.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need I don't need all like the explicit like kind of like just like random dirty talk, but I want like the characters and then because I feel like Sarah McLean says it's a lot like it should advance the plot and it shouldn't be something that you should be able to skip. And I feel like in your scenes like that, it like there's a character progression that happens through those scenes, and so like it makes it like going like okay, like it makes sense for like where the characters are instead of just like chapter 1. Let's go. Even though I like that. But like, well, you develop the characters, so I'm like, I'm invested in more than just the sexy times and all that stuff. So like, I have more to latch on to. So like, it makes those scenes even more and more enriching. So like, I love that, especially in the Endeavor Trilogy. That scene, I think it's like probably like 75% of the way through the book, and she's like, you know what, I had this. Like, I'm going for it. I was like, I love you, Tess.
Yeah, I love Tess too because it's funny because most of the time it's the male pursuing the female in life and books and anything, right? And and Tess was like a take control of her own sexuality type of person, and she saw what she wanted and she pursued, even though and then he was the one being standoffish for reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I liked flipping that on its head too, and being like having the female being the main pursuer.
And she pursues. I was like, that scene. I was like, okay. I was like, I like this.
I love that.
Too. She's just so.
She is.
Yeah, it's just like she doesn't have the ability to flirt or be coy or whatever. It's just cards on the table. And take it a card. Yeah, all the cards are on the table with her.
I love that,
and that's really refreshing too because she's not being coy or you know. And I think Shade loves that too. And he's just like, oh wow, his head is just he's having trouble between what his head is saying and what his heart and his body want. He's like cut down the middle. He's just so torn.
Jess is like, get with the program. Like, we want each other. Like, stop this.
She goes after it though. She's like, you know, like, how can you get what you want if you don't ask for it? She has that mentality throughout the whole thing. She's like, you know what?
I love her.
I'm not good at flirting, so I'm just gonna say it like what is possible. I love that. I love it.
They were fun to write. They're so fun. Yeah.
Yeah, they were absolutely amazing. I do have like a little bit of like an unrelated question. Is there any different, I guess you would call it like subcategories within romance that you would like to like dabble in, like dark, contemporary, trying to think of like mystery thriller, or I guess romantic suspense you would call it. Is there any of those ones that you would like to like dabble in after you kind of finish the current slate of books that you have on your plate?
Yes, actually. Although I've seen the difficulty in genre hopping, even within romance. Whereas my 2 series, for me, they're both essentially fantasy and shouldn't have been a difficult switch. I did see I did have more trouble finding readers for what people thought of as sci-fi than for fantasy. So I'm not sure. It's kind of a gamble to then go out and do something totally different than what your readers are expecting from you. But at the same time, I'm not really a rule follower when it comes to writing. So I already, switched it up between an ancient feeling fantasy and a futuristic feeling fantasy. And I have plenty of ideas in the back of my head. I have some YA ideas. I have some more new adult ideas, but those are probably not going to happen, even though I have, random 30-page beginnings of stuff written here and there. I had a YA idea I really wanted to write. It was a YA paranormal.
Oh, cool.
Oh, that's like catnip right now.
Like,
who doesn't like...
Because I love YA, actually, because I think you see that in my writing, actually, because it's really emotional, like deep emotion, deep point of view, angst, and stuff like that. And I think that's like hugely from my YA reader background. And I love all that. Like, you're just so in the YA, you have romance. You don't necessarily see sex, but you have romance that's so intense and these feelings and I love putting that into my adult romances, because that's what we all want, don't we? We want, some intense love that, something so passionate and wonderful. So it's kind of capturing those feelings from when you were 16, and this is like life or death and all.
Life or death, yeah.
That is so true. Especially because I feel like YA, there's been a couple like authors like Sarah J. Maas. What was it? The Blood and Honey? Serpent and Dove.
Oh,
Serpent and Dove.
I see the covers. I can't see the author.
Yeah, it's like the symbol with like the Shelby something. But I feel like now YA, YA is kind of separating itself, like upper YA, kind of like was really new adult.
Yeah.
And then like lower YA, because like you can't get some steamy teens into like YA books. Like I was surprised with Serpent and Dove. I was like, okay, I don't know, like I would give this to like a 12 to 14-year-old.
Yeah,
and
I think there is an upper YA now where if it's like mature YA, maybe 16, 17, 18, at least 17, 18. I'm not sure exactly where they draw the line. But yeah, and actually, I mean, I think a 17, 18-year-old could totally read my books. I mean, I don't think they're learning anything new at that point. At least not theoretically. So,
that's so true, though.
That's so great. I love nowadays, I think, I'm not sure how old you guys are, but I think we're all more or less, I feel like kids nowadays know way more than we knew when we.
That's for sure.
But not that I think that they. Hopefully, they're being waiting and being responsible or whatever. But I think they know. I mean,
they know.
It's not a secret what goes on. But I've actually seen some people refer to the Kingmaker Chronicles as YA. I've never advertised it that way. My publishers never advertised it that way. But some people are confused. I mean, I think you could possibly call it new adult because Kat, the heroine, is like 24, but the hero Griffin, he's in his 30s. Like, so even NA is a bit of a stretch. But for me, it was an adult romance because it's definitely explicit, sexy wise, and everything. But so that's always a little surprising.
It's steamy.
Like, I saw this YA Promise of Fire, and I'm like, no, no way.
You're like, it's not YA. Yeah, I would never think like a main character in their 20s and then also Griffin in his 30s like as YA. This was definitely, in my mind, completely adult. So
yeah.
For me too. It never occurred to me until I saw some. It just pops up on social media or whatever. And so I always wonder about that, but I have no control over it.
Yeah.
Another idea I actually I don't know, have you heard much about paranormal women's fiction?
I have.
Yeah.
I've read a couple. It's a thing.
I haven't read any.
Well, it's the complete opposite of what I was just saying is I love YA, but this is heroine. So I would love to do something in paranormal paranormal women's fiction, because you've got the paranormal, you've got sort of some magical elements that I love to write, but you've got a mature heroine. So she's usually 40 and up. So with some life experience, maybe kids, I don't know. But so it's a totally different, I'm sort of right in the middle with what I write. I've got my sort of, adult, but not mature in that way yet, mid-20s to early 30s or whatever. So if I branched off, I either want to go YA or
complete opposite.
Or complete opposite on the spectrum. Just like Amanda, whenever you write, no closed door.
No, I don't think
closed door. Unless you tell me you go it's in the synopsis, closed door romance. So I know, because some authors don't do that, and then you read the book and you're like, wait,
this is Fade to Black. What?
Did it? Come on, they just kiss.
I waited all this time for that.
I know, right? I need to see it with my eyes.
Yeah, well, I agree with Charles with what you just said. It doesn't have to be long and drawn out, but you want something satisfying there, both emotionally and physically or whatever. So
I agree. If you make a kiss, make it an earth-shattering. If that's all you're gonna give me, you can do closed door, but you have to do everything else so incredibly well.
Yeah.
Where romance readers are like, oh yeah, I was fine with that. When it's not done well, I'm like, you just kissed for 2 sentences, and that was the whole entire book. I could read YA and get more feels than this.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be more. That's like the foreplay. You can see the foreplay, and then it can fade to black for the actual, action.
Actual scene.
And that can still be satisfying.
Yeah, get heavy on the foreplay, but
yeah. And would you ever consider going indie? Doing some indie publishing?
Definitely. Well, I actually have one novella out already. It's called A Curse for Spring. And
I'm gonna write that down.
Write that down.
It's actually unrelated to any of my other worlds. It's totally standalone. So it could be a good starting point for readers who want to discover my writing style. And it's a fantasy romance. There's a quest, road trip, banter, a little bit. I mean, it's shorter. It's compressed. I mean, my usual books are well over 100,000 words, so they're big. And this is, 28,000 words. It was meant to be a novella. So it, everything moves along a little faster in that sense. But yeah, it was super fun to write. I wrote that for an anthology with some of my fantasy romance author friends. With Jeffy Kennedy, Grace Draven, and Jennifer Eastep.
Grace Draven. I haven't read Grace Draven. I feel like I'm not a true fan, a true person.
You haven't read Grace Draven?
I have that one book where it's they kind of hate each other, the way they look or something. Radiance. I have that, but I haven't gotten around to it.
Put yourself in timeout. You need to read that.
Hey, I read all of Amanda Boucher's books except for the novella, so I think you need to put yourself in timeout, Nicole.
I'm gonna read it today.
So fantastic. That was an indie project. The anthology was put together by Jeffy. So all I did was provide the actual novella. And that was great because I had no experience in indie publishing and I learned a ton and I had savvy people who knew what they were doing helping me out there. So that was perfect. And so the anthology is called Seasons of Sorcery.
Okay.
And we all wrote a season-based novella. So mine is spring, so A Curse for Spring. And then it's now standalone also. I put it out myself with a new cover and it's just on its own. So you can find that too. And then if I do this novella for Pierce, for example, one of the brothers in the Kingmaker Trilogy, I'm sure I would do that on my own. So that would probably be my first true indie project where I just have to deal with it all myself and figure it all out myself.
It's a lot.
I have this one little experience behind me, so that's good. And I have very generous, lovely friends who, like Grace and Jeffy and Jennifer, who are always there to help me and give me advice. So
amazing.
I love that.
Oh, that's so cool. I read Kill the Queen by Jennifer when I came. I was like, whoo.
It's cool. That's a good book.
I was like, this book is. I was like, I like this. I was like, I like this. I was like, this is good. Like, I need to read more. I want to go back to her like our huge overarching series. I think the Assassins or something like that. Elemental Assassins. Like, but I was like, whew, that's a lot of books. I'm like,
it is.
I'm scared.
Number 19 just came out.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it seems like it was like I've read a 40-book series, and that's like daunting. like
I think reading a trilogy
going,
is a lot.
Once you get going, you just kind of like
you just fly through them.
Well, Kill the Queen and that trilogy is complete from Jennifer Estep, and I actually just read Capture the Crown, which is the first spin-off in a new trilogy in that world, and I loved it. Like, I loved Kill the Queen, but I liked Capture the Crown even more. It was so good. So that's upcoming. It was she gave it to me early to read for a blurb, and that was super fun. And I was
that's amazing. And you have Nalini Singh blurb your books. I was like, holy! I was like, Amanda made it. Like,
Amanda made it.
Is, like, if you get Cressley or J.R. Ward, like, everyone will read it. Like, they won't even care. They'll just be like, I'm gonna buy it. Like, I have no idea what this is about, but like all these major.
Oh, really? So that was actually your initial reason?
Yeah, that's awesome. How I found it. I was just like looking on Amazon. Like, I was like, I'm looking for something to read. I was like, oh, I like Nalini Singh. Let's see. And I said, Nalini Singh blurb. I'm like, buy it.
Buy it.
Grab the audio because I haven't heard about the Kingmaker before I picked up Night Chaser. So I was like, oh, okay, let me try this out. Like, I don't know. I haven't read sci-fi romance. I was still like a romance newbie. So I was like, I don't know. Like, let's try this. Let me try this. I'm like in my contemporary mode, but like, let's try this out. And I absolutely loved it.
Oh, that's awesome.
He never looked back.
Yeah.
I never looked back.
Good. No, Nalini was so generous. I was really, really lucky right off the bat with Promise of Fire, actually. A bunch of amazing, generous authors gave just spontaneous shout outs, and I might have missed some, and I know I saw some, and when I saw Eloisa James tweet about my book, I nearly had a heart attack. Like, literally, I started crying. And then Nalini and Sarah McLean gave it a wonderful review in the Washington Post, and
wow.
I mean, you just can't even imagine what I was thinking. I rarely happy cry, and there are at least like 5 times where I was like, I cannot believe it. And it was,
my goodness. And I have to give you props really too, because
to getting the book discovered.
Yeah.
And
I have to give you props too, because I pay attention to like star reviews and like Kirkus. Like, I always look for like upcoming romance titles through them. I was like, who is this Amanda? Like, all her books have like star reviews. I was like, what? Like, I was like, because I know these are really hard to get. So I'm like, hold on, like, why haven't I read these yet?
I know. Well, thank you. But I'm terrified because up until now, I have a starred review from Kirkus and from American Library Association book list also for every single book. And I'm like, but every book that comes out, I'm terrified that this is the one where
I hate it.
Whoa, and then I'll be just devastated.
Oh, no.
It's fine when, the first ones don't, and then you get one and you're like, oh my God, that's amazing. But if they, I'm not complaining because it's amazing and I'm thrilled. But it's like, I'm just dreading that moment where the review comes back and, it's not starred, or even worse, they hated it. Or
That's never going to happen.
That's never going to happen. They won't hate it.
Never does.
I hope not.
But I just saw that. I was like, for people who don't know, getting a star review on Kirkus is like super, super hard. It's like really a big thing when you get one. I was like, who's this author that has all of these? Like, someone like Sarah McLean, all her books don't have star reviews. So I was like,
I know.
Like, and then you read the books and you're like, okay, I can see why. These are like absolutely amazing. And no one on book 2 talks about these books enough. There's like a couple of channels that shout out Promise of Fire, but then I'm like, what about Night Chaser? What about the Endeavor Trilogy? They're all really, really good. So I wanted to ask you, what are some of your favorite romance books or authors that you would recommend to people?
Oh gosh, I have so many. Well, my first love of romance was historical romance. and I'm a huge fan of Julia Quinn, Louisa James, Sarah MacLean, Courtney Milan. I just think they have amazing books with amazing characters and sparkling banter. And
yes,
so I really love historicals. Those are some of my favorites. In my fantasy romance gals that I love, you know, there's Grace Draven and Jeffy Kennedy and Jennifer Estep, and we're really close, and we've done the anthology together, and we read each other's books and love them all. And have you read Maria Vale? Have either of you read
Maria Vale?
Maria Vale.
No, it does not ring a bell.
So that's definitely a name to remember. She writes, the bottom line is they're wolf shifter books.
Oh, yes.
Say no more.
I read the first one.
Oh, you did?
I did.
They are so different. And the perspective is just turned on its head. You're in the wolf's head. The wolf is the wolf and only a human when they have to be. And it's not the human fighting off the wolf. It's the wolf using their human form to protect their pack and their land.
Wow.
And the books are so intense. And when I read them, I just I dream about wolves. I'm running through the woods as a wolf in my dream. To talk about visceral writing and really intense and just beautiful writing. So Maria Vale, she's one of my favorites. She's also an amazing person. I actually made a list earlier. Of course, I left it over here. Hold on. You can see my bookshelf in the meantime.
Yeah, I spot the Rick Riordan, and I was like, I approve. I'm a huge fan. I read all of his books except his newest series.
This is entirely Rick Riordan up to here. Story Thieves. I actually haven't read this. This is my son's books. Up here, I have my Maria V. Snyder, who I adore. Oh, that's another name. Okay, Maria. I'm sure you know Maria V. Snyder.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with Poison Study a long time ago, and that was actually my initial push to write a fantasy romance. I loved Poison Study. The original trilogy, and there's 3 more books since, which I haven't had a chance to read yet. Actually, I do have them though. The original Poison Study trilogy was my gateway into fantasy romance, and that's why I originally started out thinking I would have more of a romantic element in it. And then I couldn't do that because I just love romance too much. I'm too much a fan of romance, but so it already veered off in that sense. But that was where my initial spark came from. I was like, I love this. I want to do this. So, and also, I don't know if she has Navigating the Stars, which is a YA. Oh, you would like this, Charles, because now you're into sci-fi. It's more YA, but like we were saying, more mature YA. The protagonists are 17, 18.
Okay.
And it is so good. It's literally the trilogy: Navigating the Stars, Chasing the Shadows, Defending the Galaxy is my favorite read of at least the last year or two. I was so into it, and I actually buddy read it with my son, who's 13. And he adored it too. So loved it. He's mature also. He's ahead in school. He skipped some grades, and so we'll say 13 going on 17. Or maybe 16 to be. But so that is amazing. So yeah, if I had to say anything to read that I would super highly recommend, it's Maria Vale and her wolf. What is the name of them? Oh, I think the series is called The Legend of All Wolves.
I think so.
The Legend of All Wolves. And Maria V. Snyder's Navigating the Stars. What is the name? Let me just, because there's a series name, Sentinels of the Galaxy. This is actually the Australian cover, so you might not see the one.
That's really pretty, though.
Yeah. These are the paperbacks from Australia, so I know Maria, and I read the first book, or was it the first 2? Yeah, I had the first 2 on my Kindle, and I just had them for a while, and I didn't read them, but then I read them, and I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing, and it was so good. And so I wrote to her, and I said how much I loved it, And she said, well, actually, book 3 is coming out soon. Do you want to, read it ahead of time? And I was like,
yes.
You're like, give it to me. Yes.
Give it to me now.
And then they ended up putting a quote of mine on the front cover.
Oh my, that's like full circle moment.
So basically, the reason
you're blurbing books now. Oh my God.
Was Marie Snyder's Poison Study. That's the reason I started writing the books that I published first. And now my name is on one of her books. It's like this moment, like never forget.
You're like, is this real life?
Generous, and they sent me the Australian versions because that's where my quote is. Oh gosh. So I don't know. More books, oh, you know who else? And this is fun because it's contemporary, so it's totally different. Adriana Anders. She's actually a friend of mine. She also lives in France.
I think I've heard of her.
She wrote a contemporary romantic suspense called Whiteout, which is
I love romantic suspense.
Did you read Whiteout? Or?
No, I have it on my Kindle. I have it on my Kindle though.
It's so good. So it's set in Antarctica. And it's a research station that gets attacked by these well, we're not really sure what they are in the beginning, but bad guys attack the research station, and they kidnap everyone except for 2 people escape, and these 2 are stuck, and they have to make their way across Antarctica in order to survive, and also thwart the bad guys. And it's got the grumpy hero, sunshiny heroine trope. Together. It's so good. And then there's I'm
going to recommend this to Izzy.
And Antarctica, is like this character in itself, really. And I know Adriana did a ton of research, so it's really, it's really accurate on sort of the conditions and stuff and what they had to go through. It's really good. It's called Whiteout.
That sounds now you just kind of bumped it up in my Kindle graveyard. I'm the worst. If I buy a Kindle book, I have to prioritize it, or it just gets in it just floats in the ether for years. I'm like, oh wait, I bought that book.
Yeah,
I download so many.
Especially when they have the free sales, I'm like, okay, download it. I have no intent, so I'm going through my Kindle and making sure I read all my Kindle books. It's gonna take me 2 years to do that because there's so many.
So long. I get those emails every day with the free books, and I'm like, download. It's so bad.
I know, and we do tend to then deprioritize them because they were free or 99 cents, and that doesn't mean they're not a fantastic book. So
right.
I know I do the same thing, and then I've got and it's also hard to make a choice, and I do a lot of reading of friends' books now because I'm really lucky. I have friends who are such amazing writers and have these awesome books. And so, I want to keep up with that too. So a lot of the series that I really loved and was so into, and I still want to get back to, it's just, I don't have time because, life it's filled up with other, for example, the Immortals After Dark series by Cressley Cole. I love those books. So I'm 3 or 4 books behind now. The last, I don't think she hasn't put out anything new in a while though either.
It's been a while.
And I'm already a couple books behind. So I know it's been a while, but that was a series I would download the day the book came out, and I would read it, and I would stay up all night, and I would devour it like a chocolate, and that was it. It was gone and done. But I loved it. And of course I've read, I don't know, probably 13 or 15 or something because I've read all of them up until fairly recently. But that's another huge, highly recommend. They just
so good.
They're sexy, they're funny, there's a big overarching plot. So good.
Yeah. I'm actually doing a readathon for that series right now. The Immortals After Dark.
I was like, Charles plugged yourself.
I'm doing
Come
one.
on.
We're doing Immortals After Dark readathon.
Oh.
I think we're on book. We just finished Kiss of the Demon. I can't remember what book number that is. And then we're doing The Fated Mates, the way Sarah McLean read it. So we're doing The Warlord Wants Forever next. And then
Oh, okay.
And it's my first time reading through the series. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so funny. I remember laughing out loud. I would laugh out loud at all of those books. And those are so good. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Those are amazing.
I have a huge list of like, oh my God.
So Charles, with your Immortals After Dark read along, this is my.
It's a huge list.
Oh wow! How many?
I got your question ahead of time. Oh, this even goes on to the back. I mean, look at that. Of course, I don't know how to spell, so I'm like, what? Yeah, so I obviously don't have time to talk about all of these people that I love, but as soon because Charles sent me a couple questions at a time, it's like, oh, favorite authors or books, and I started writing a few down and a few more, and then I was like, I end up with that.
That's amazing.
Thinking of them.
That's amazing. And then one fun question that I like to ask everyone: what are some of the top 3 movies or TV shows that you have been loving during quarantine?
Oh, okay. Well, it's a little delicate here because we've got me, in my 40s. We've got my son who's 13, but quite mature. And my daughter who's 8, although she only turned 8 in November. So we'll say 7, 8 during quarantine. Mm-hmm. It's hard to find something that's okay for everyone. So we end up either with something that's a little too dark and slightly inappropriate for the little one, or maybe boring, maybe not quite actiony, intense enough for the older one. So let's see. But we all super enjoyed The Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm. Love The Mandalorian.
Like Baby Yoda.
We got really into WandaVision.
Oh,
I love WandaVision.
I have a popular opinion. I didn't like the ending because I was like into those theories and everything, and then everything happened. I was like, wait, no. I was like, it wasn't Agatha all along. It was Wanda. I was like, you lied to me.
Spoiler alert!
I'm sorry. I just said it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. That song is catchy though.
I can't say I loved everything that happened, but it was super well done and we were very into it. So I agree. Mm-hmm. For my romance lover's heart, it was a little harsh. Yeah. Same with The Mandalorian in ways. Like I always like a little romance, but there was definitely love in there. It's more of a father-son love, but it was pretty intense and good. But for me, that if there's even a side character, Mando didn't have to have a romance, but if there had been a side character, something.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
For me, books or TV or movies, whatever, it feels like there's a little bit missing for me if there's not a romance somewhere in it.
Same.
But we did like both of those a lot. Right now we're watching again on Disney. We have Disney Plus. That's 69 euros of my life. I'll tell you, during quarantine.
Yeah.
And we're watching Marvel's Runaways right now.
Oh, I heard about that.
Yeah, it's definitely a little darker than I thought, because the main characters are all high schoolers. So I thought it would be yeah, I don't know. I didn't think it would be quite as dark, but it's not it's not veering toward inappropriate. I don't usually either. So okay. See what else. Oh well, every now and then it veers toward inappropriate too, but what can you do? Like I said, it's a juggling act. We absolutely love Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh, I love Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I love Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
It's so fun. It's funny, but it's not always funny. I mean, they're more heavy.
Some serious.
They're heavier.
Serious
more serious themes that are hit upon, which is good. But it also manages to keep it really full of comedy too, so that's fun. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know. See, sometimes if we have like a little 25 minutes we want to fill in, we watch a Brain Games. I don't know if anyone's heard of Brain Games.
Oh, I heard of that.
It's really interesting. It's entertaining and informative. It's good for kids and adults. Mm-hmm. It's basically they take the real science behind what's happening in your brain and explain it for different issues, like in terms of also like anthropological studies. Why is a human being going to take a risk or not take a risk, or why are they prone to gambling or not gambling, or gender roles explored. Like, why is a female innately better at this and a male innately better at that, for example? But it's done in a really entertaining way, and and they put these scenarios together and have people, like random people, kind of do them, and like things like honesty, like are we, you know, what makes us be honest or not? And there was this whole show where they had it was all fake, but a waitress who was really rude and, you know, not paying attention or whatever, and she gave back the wrong change, and it's to see whether the people corrected her mistake. So when she was acting really rude and annoying, a lot of people didn't correct the mistake. When she was super nice and chipper and friendly, and she gave them back, you know, extra change, they would always correct the mistake. So they're looking into things like this. It's called
Got it.
We actually really enjoy it, and that's good for everyone. Thank God. There's something that works for everyone.
Yeah, that's really cool. We got a nice mix. We have like entertainment, like fun superhero, Star Wars type stuff, and then we have like educational. That's also fun. That's also fun. It's good to get some education in while learning something too. So like that's a good top 3. I approve.
Okay.
I haven't watched The Mandalorian. I have watched one episode. I'm the worst when it comes to like streaming shows. I'll watch 2 episodes and then I'll like go off and read a book, and then I'll start another show and then forget about the other show that I started. I'm like, I'll get to it eventually, and then I just like go off to another. It's like my Netflix currently watching and my Disney Plus, like it's all over the place. Like I sometimes left movies with like 30 minutes left. I'm the worst.
30 minutes left?
Yeah, I mean, we don't do that.
I'm the worst. Like
we've always got a few things going at once, so we have some choices, but we try not to get like too many things going at once. You know, make our way through one thing entirely and then switch. So, because otherwise it's just,
you just build up.
The choice is already so overwhelming. You just look at Netflix and like, oh my gosh, I don't know.
I don't know what to watch.
What are we watching tonight? It's an hour just to pick what to watch, and then by that time you're like, well, it's time to go to bed.
It's true. It's really true. But I will wrap us up. Thank you so much, Amanda, for coming on my channel and talking about all your books. If you ever want to send me a Nicole arc, so we are always open. We'll send you our emails. Like we'll beta read. I just want more stories from you. We will nudge you on Instagram. We're like, I reread this book. Hopefully this next book comes out soon.
Right.
We'll make it very subtle. We'll just tag you, but we'll just have a picture of the book. We'll be like, Amanda knows what we're talking about.
Amanda knows.
Like she knows.
She knows what we mean.
I will leave links to both the Amazon pages so you can like buy the books. Like you should buy them on audio. They're absolutely amazing. I'll leave the Libro FM links too if you want to support Libro FM and buy the audiobooks through them. And I'll also leave everyone's social media links down below in the description box. And Amanda, you are always welcome to come back on my channel. I loved having you so much. We can just do a whole talking just about recommendations.
I know.
And like get through that list.
I'll pull out my list.
Yes.
We can
thank
totally
you so
do
much
that.
for inviting me. I had a wonderful time talking with both of you. Great questions and so much fun.
All right, thank you so much, man. Like, thank you so much, man. I feel like me and Nicole are just kind of like dumbfounded. We're just like, we can't believe we're doing this right now. So
I know my heart was like beating so fast.
Oh, wow.
As soon as like Charles and I were talking like before you came on, and he was like, "Oh, Amanda's here." I was like, "Oh my god!"
I was like, Nicole, prepare yourself.
I thought I was prepared.
Like ever, I'm tiny and non-aggressive. Don't worry, I'm very, very, very calm.
But
thank you so much,
sweet.
Charles. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
No, I knew like Nicole was a super fan, so I was like, I have to ask Nicole to join me for this because like I think I would get like some DMs from Nicole like, wait, you had it through Amanda and you didn't tell me about it.
I would have. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
But thank you so much, Amanda, again, and thank you so much for everyone watching this video, and I'll catch you guys with a brand new video. Bye, everyone.